You know, I called you the father of design, and then you start with the typewriter story. So, Shane Snow is our next speaker. Shane is an award-winning entrepreneur and journalist and the chief creative officer at Contently, a technology company he co-founded in 2010 with the mission to create a better media world. Please welcome Shane. Thanks, Shane.
I want to start off by painting a picture of a hypothetical scenario. So close your eyes if you want, or stare at this beautiful scene here, and imagine that you're driving your brand new car at night a few miles out of town in the woods. And it starts to rain, and so you start driving a little slower because it's a nice car, and the road gets windy, and the trees get thicker, and the rain gets heavier, so you're driving very slow. And you notice as you slow down around a curve that there's a figure on the side of the road, a person standing there. And as you get closer, you realize that this person, you actually recognize them. This person is your very best friend in the entire world. You haven't seen them for a while, but they're your best friend, and once they actually saved your life from death. So you see this person and say, oh my gosh, there they are. And so you pull over to give them a ride home. And as you start pulling over, you notice that there's a second person kind of hidden behind this friend of yours. It's a little old lady. She's got a cane, and she's getting no umbrella, and she's getting soaked in this rainstorm. And remember, we're miles away from town. So wheels start turning in your head, and then you notice that there's a third person behind her. And this, miraculously, you can't believe it, is the man or woman of your dreams. And this is your only chance in your life to meet him or her. And so you look, and you have a nice car, and there is only one passenger seat. So the question that I want to ask you in this scenario, imagine you're there, is who would you pick? Now, you have a very good reason to pick any of these people. And I poll people sometimes on who they would pick, and I think it says a lot about you. But you have a very good reason to pick your friend because you owe them. They saved your life. You have a very good reason to pick the old lady because she needs help, clearly. She probably has the least amount of chance of walking back to town. But certainly, can it be that selfish of a motivation to make this one sacrifice to meet the man or woman of your dreams, to be happy forever? Come on. So, think about who you'd pick, and I'm going to tell you the right answer, which is that you should, of course, pick the old lady. But then what you should do is give your car keys to your friend, make them drive her home, and then stay and wait in the rain for a romantic date with the man or woman of your dreams. And I love this scenario because it's an example of one of my favorite topics, which psychologists call lateral thinking. Lateral thinking is this concept that is about problem solving. And typically, we as logical humans, we tend to attack problems straightforward. And we approach problems the way that they're framed. So I framed the question, there are 3 people you can help, you have 1 seat, what do you do? Lateral thinking is about stepping outside of that question and questioning the question itself, rethinking the assumptions or the conventions upon which the question is based so that you can arrive at a more elegant solution. This is the kind of thinking that computer programmers and computer hackers and MacGyver tend to use to find creative ways to approach problems. This is the Trojan horse. This is, instead of attacking the castle walls, digging a hole underneath the castle. So you see examples of lateral thinking out there in very clever people throughout history. I spent the last 2 years of my life writing a book about people who do incredible things, people in businesses that achieve the incredible faster than was thought possible through lateral thinking. And I want to tell a story about that. Before I tell the story about that, the reason for my intellectual journey into lateral thinking is because I was building a business and I was afraid of the plateau problem. That if you look at research, most businesses stop growing after a few years. And most people get to a plateau point in their career where they hit a ceiling and it becomes harder and harder to grow and to progress. And you look at industries, maybe especially outside of technology, where there just doesn't seem to be much progress after a certain point. And so I was interested in people who were able to make breakthroughs and get past the plateau. And I studied them, and I wrote a book about it. And one of the stories in the book hits a little close to home for me, because I'm from Southeast Idaho, where it is incredibly boring to be a teenager. And there's this game that kids play in college and in high school in the Rocky Mountains called Bigger or Better, that I think illustrates a point. Bigger or Better is sort of like a scavenger hunt for adults. You're bored at night and there's nothing to do, and so you get a group of friends and you split up into teams, and you start off with a small object, like a toothpick. And so you'll take the toothpick, and the object of the game is to come back at the end of the night, having traded the toothpick for the best thing, the biggest or the best thing, and then you compare at the end. And so what you do, the strategy is you go door to door and you knock on strangers' houses. And you knock on the house, and and sometimes they peek through the blinds, they see weird teenagers, and they don't answer, but sometimes they open the door. And you say something like, "Hi, we're playing a game, it's called Bigger or Better. Do you have something that's slightly bigger or better than this toothpick that you'd be willing to trade us for?" And so people usually play along, toothpick is not much, they're not looking for a toothpick, but someone will trade you a piece of gum. So you trade the piece of gum, and then you immediately go to the next house and say the same thing. "Hi, we're playing a game called Bigger or Better. Are you willing to trade us something slightly bigger or better than this piece of gum?" Sometimes people say no, or they're confused, but usually they play along. So you trade the gum for a ballpoint pen. You go to the next house, you trade the ballpoint pen for a half-used pack of sticky notes. You go to the next house, the sticky notes turn into, well, it turns out that the woman there has an unwanted admirer, and he left her some flowers, and she doesn't want them, so yeah, take the flowers. I'll take the sticky notes. And so now you have something that someone might actually want. You go to the neighbors next door, they give you, they put the flowers in a vase and give you last month's issue of Nylon magazine. You go to the neighbors next door, they trade Nylon magazine for this month's issue of GQ. And then you go to the next door, and this trade suddenly starts getting to the point where you have something interesting. You trade the GQ for an old, rumply novelty Transformers t-shirt. Well, the teenager at the next door loves Transformers and collects them, so he's willing to trade you his lava lamp for the Transformers t-shirt. Now you have something that the roommates at the next house really want. They want the lava lamp, so they trade you an old mirror. Down the street, there's an elderly couple that collects antiques, and their grandson went to college and left his BMX bike, so they trade you the mirror for the BMX bike, and then things start getting really interesting. And people start coming home from this game after 2 or 3 hours of trading with canoes and television sets, and there was even this mythology that friends of mine repeated, that someone once came back with a used car, kind of a beat-up used car, and it ran, but you bought that with a toothpick, which is incredible. And so this game, Bigger or Better, illustrates a couple of points. One is sort of some common success advice, is that you should always be parlaying your current success for something bigger, for something more, and that you should never stop and never sort of try to convince the person who won't give you something bigger or better at that door, go to the next house. And this amounts to a lot of the common success advice that we give, but there's something about this game that's really interesting that has to do with lateral thinking, and it's illustrated by one of the greatest predators in the animal kingdom, which is the cheetah. So the cheetah is the world's fastest land animal. It can run around 75 miles an hour, and it's this incredible predator. But the thing that makes it such a good predator is not its speed, actually. It's its turning radius. It's that the cheetah is able to jump sideways very quickly and very effectively, so when the antelope scurry away, the cheetah can still get it. This is what makes it a great predator. And also, the cheetah has this uncanny ability to distract your Google image searches for when it gives you the suggestion of baby cheetahs, and you maybe spend an hour or so doing that instead of preparing a presentation. But they're so cute. They think that they're ferocious and they're these great predators, but really they're just cute. So the thing about the cheetah is its ability to turn sideways, to leap into the second lane that allows it to be such a good predator. Well, you see this actually in breakthrough careers and breakthrough innovation as well. So James Patterson, the man at the top left, he's one of the world's best-selling authors in history. He sold 250 million books. He got to where he did, and this incredibly fast-climbing novelist, by climbing the ranks of the advertising industry, using his knowledge in advertising to jump over to become a novelist and market his own books in a way that his publisher couldn't. And he built an empire using basically his thinking, lateral thinking from the ad industry to now be this incredibly successful author that authors like me are jealous of. You see the woman, the ballet dancer, is fitting that we're at a ballet studio right now. This is Zoe Saldana, who broke into acting instead of spending years and decades doing auditions and being an extra and sort of climbing this terrible ladder. she got her first break as when a movie needed a ballet dancer, and she was a ballet dancer, and that's how she got her first break, and subsequently went on to become an Academy Award-winning actress. She skipped years of sort of wasted time by coming in laterally. I studied in my book, which is called Smartcuts, that came out a couple of months ago, the career trajectories of the best presidents of the United States. And it turns out that the best US presidents actually had the least amount of time in politics. And they came from, what made them the best presidents is the places where they came from allowed them to have flexibility, which it turns out is the key to being a good leader. They were police chiefs and philanthropists and businessmen and war heroes. Those are the ones that did so much better than the career politicians who spent 30, 40 years in politics before becoming president. Then you look at, not just in careers, but products and businesses. The fastest selling phone in history came from a computer company at a time when only telecommunications companies were selling phones. It wasn't a huge stretch for us to make this leap on something slightly bigger, something slightly sideways from Apple, but that sideways innovation changed the world. And so when I think about innovation, I think about breakthrough progress, and I think about lateral thinking, sometimes I think about how does a company last for 100 years and have nearly 500,000 employees and still be relevant and still be a big force in the world economy like IBM? It's not because IBM traded toothpicks for pieces of wood of increasing size. It's because IBM went from card punchers to typewriters to mainframes and personal computers to software. That sideways lateral thinking has allowed the company to stay relevant. But I think also that's what allows our employees to succeed and to not jump ship from business to business. It's important for us as managers and as people who are working in the future of work to think about how can we empower those that work with us to ask the questions that lead to lateral thinking, to question the assumptions and the conventions of this is the way things are done, but what if we took a step sideways? So I think about lateral thinking also with IBM Verse, rather than orienting, if you're going to build a better inbox, the strategy might be, let's make it slightly more efficient, let's make it faster, let's make it cleaner, the text more legible or whatever it is, add better filters. But why not take a step sideways, get out of the car and say, what if we oriented your inbox around people instead of around chronology, instead of around the flood? And what if you took the 5 apps that you're normally jumping between, your calendar and your inbox and your to-do list and your org chart and your contact list, and mashed them into one smart application, radical simplification, to allow you to work smarter rather than simply building better apps in all of those categories? But what really gets me excited is this idea of applying lateral thinking, which one of the things that I write about is this idea of 10x thinking, that if you really want to do things differently than before, you want to make true breakthroughs that cause people to have no excuse but to switch their behavior. You want to try and make products that are 10 times better, not just 10% better than what is already out there. And in order to do that, you have to rethink the paradigms of your current product and your current industry. And often you do that by pulling in things from other industries, but often just the exercise of saying, how could we make this 10 times better, allows you to rethink the things you need to rethink. So I get excited about applying the talents of the world's coolest computer to the idea of workflow and professional work and email. And I know that these things are in the works, but imagine the day when Watson can tell you what is important about your workday and about your workflow, and using technology to make you more efficient, not just 10% more efficient, but 10 times more efficient, gets me really excited. And I think these are the kinds of lessons that we're using email, we're using to-do lists and calendars and scheduling to make our day more efficient. At the end of the day, email is not our job. There's something else that's our job. We're building things, we're managing people, we're trying to change lives and change the world. So I think the most important thing for us as we think about using these lessons of the products that IBM is using, but using the lessons of great lateral thinkers throughout history, is that we need to foster environments where our teams and our employees can ask the questions that are scary. They can say, what if we did things differently? What if we did things unconventionally? What if we took a step sideways? And I really believe this because when you look at the history of great breakthroughs in the arts and the sciences and in business, you see that no one ever changed the world by doing the same thing over and over again by digging the same hole deeper. But also, no one ever changed the world by playing by the same rules that everyone else played by. You change the world by rethinking the conventions, by breaking rules that aren't necessarily rules. And so I think that today we have a chance to break some big ones together. So thank you.
Thanks, Shane. That was a great talk. So let me start by saying that I hope you all like the venue and the event. It started out by playing Bigger or Better with Bob. You have no idea what I gave up. So, look, also as I was sitting over there talking with some of my colleagues, as we were listening to Shane, which was a very interesting discussion, there was another option. There really was. I think the old lady had an iPhone and she called up Uber, and when we tried to pick her